breakfast.
What's in a name? Well, quite a bit, at least when it comes to old comics, specifically Scoop Comics, first published in November of 1941 by Harry Chesler's Feature Syndicate, an anthology series featuring war, adventure, and humor stories. Scoop changed its name and publisher with issue number 4, becoming Yankee Comics, with an emphasis on military humor. This lasted for 3 issues until it returned to Chesler Dynamic, resuming the Scoop moniker for issue 8. Issue number 9 saw the title change to Snap Comics, before it switched to Jest for 2 issues, then becoming KO Comics with number 12. Issue 13 appeared as Carnival Comics before the final metamorphosis into Red Seal Comics in October of 1945. That incarnation ran for 4 issues before finally giving up the ghost. At least for Chesler, but hey, what a ride. Over the course of its 17 issues, the book featured such notable characters as Mother Hubbard, Little Nemo in Slumberland, and Foxy Grandpa. Okay, so some are more notable than others, but like the man once said, they can't all be Maseratis. Today we're focusing on issue number 17 of Red Seal, featuring the delightfully off-the-wall art of Paul Gatuso. Gatuso is best known for his work for Chesler, although he also contributed to Avon, Fox, and Harvey Comics. His highly expressive style is unmistakable, his oddly distorted characters bursting with kinetic energy. Take the Black Dwarf. First appearing in Spotlight Comics number 1 with only a dozen appearances to his name, Shorty Wilson, aka the Black Dwarf, was your standard mystery man, a street-level Avenger fighting weird villains of the underworld, alongside his presumably reformed squad of crooks, the Human Fly, Nitro, and Gal Friday, Arsenic. As our story begins, Creepy Greg and his gang rob a payroll truck, making off with a cool 200 thou. Luckily, small-time informant Nitro is a witness. He contacts ex-football star Shorty Wilson at the City Athletic Club and clues him in. Unnoticed, a bellhop overhears their conversation and reports back to Creepy. Meanwhile, Shorty and Nitro meet up at the hideout and compare notes. There, Wilson slips into his Black Dwarf outfit and details the plan. He sends Nitro to search Creepy's apartment while he and Arsenic, disguised as a nurse, head to the hospital. There, we see Creepy switch places with crony Snowbird, who's been acting as his double. Just then, the bellhop rushes in and reveals that Wilson is secretly the Black Dwarf. He's then dispatched to bury the loot and remaining dynamite from the payroll job. Meanwhile, at the hospital entrance, Snowbird encounters the Black Dwarf. He doesn't get far, thanks to this trigger-happy cop. Dear Lord, what's happening with his chin? After delivering a line to the cop, the dwarf is able to get inside the hospital. There, Arsenic is preparing to give Creepy a dose of True Serum. Boy, get your hands on anything back then. Creepy is wise to her shenanigans and resists the shot, escaping down the fire escape. Frustrated at having botched the case, the pair return to the hideout. There, they learn of the bellhop hiding the evidence, but before Firefly could grab him, the kid drove himself off a cliff. Just then, Cohort Nitro arrives, wounded. We learn Creepy and his blonde mole are headed out to retrieve the hidden money. Outside of town, Creepy discovers he's being tailed by members of his own gang. The blonde ventilates their pursuers, sending them plummeting over the hillside. The Black Dwarf and Human Fly arrive moments later, rushing the pair. They snag the blonde without commotion, but before they can grab Creepy, the booby-trapped stash explodes. See, kids? Crime really doesn't pay. Except, when it does. Next up, the Gay Desperado, with art by legendary creator George Tuska. A dispute over cattle sees Knob Turner, accused Jake Burns of shady business dealings after taking over rancher Jim Collins' farm. After implying Turner may have murdered Collins, things get punchy. An angered Knob reveals Chuck Carson's memory is returned, adding another wrinkle to the plot, but Turner is unconcerned. He's not even frightened at the prospect of the Gay Desperado getting involved. In fact, he writes him a note, leaving it at the bar. We never see it, but I'm guessing it looks something like this. Meanwhile, the Gay Desperado has slipped into town under cover of darkness. Turns out Desperado is the aforementioned Jim Collins, not dead after all, but merely disguised as an overgrown minion. After receiving the note, he attempts to leave, but the sheriff has him dead to rights. Desperado bowls the armed man over, running straight into Knob Turner in the process. After taunting the downed man, Desperado flees, but Knob and the sheriff begin blasting, drawing the attention of Patsy. The kid notes Knob running off and follows him to Chuck Carson. Seems Carson's returning memory is the key to clearing Jim Collins' name, something Burns just can't allow. He dispatches Carson with a shotgun butt to the head, but the act is witnessed by Patsy, who could learn a thing or two about stealth. The kid warns Desperado, who senses another frame-up. Using some Old West ingenuity, a trap is laid. Okay, it's less ingenuity and more using a human being as bait, but hey, kid sidekicks were a dime a dozen back then. Burns falls for it, leaving him open for a roping, but the Desperado remains in the shadows until the criminal helpfully wanders off the edge of a cliff. Hey, not everyone can afford to shoot their enemies with silver bullets, you know. With Burns dead, that's one less obstacle to Desperado getting his ranch back, which amounts to a happy ending around these parts. Now go put some respectable clothing on and stop hanging around with underage kids. People are beginning to talk. Next, we kick it up a notch with Lady Satan, a sworn foe of the Nazis after a bombing raid took the life of her fiancé. Lady Satan inexplicably switched to fighting occult forces in her third appearance. Hey, somebody's gotta. After briefing us on her uncanny background, Lady Satan pulls up on a trio of children cowering in the rain along a lonely roadside. She offers to take them home and the kids accede, but unseen in the darkness lurks the Werewolf Master. He utters a sinister incantation and the children transform into snarling, snapping wolves. Lady Satan does her best to evade the beasts, but they prove too swift and savage. Using the Zonda powder, she drives the wolves back, but promises she'll return to free them. Realizing who he's dealing with, the Werewolf Master flees, screaming into the night. What a drama queen. He and the wolves return to their hideout, a long-abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town. He transforms the pack back into children, locking them in the basement with the promise of more to join them in the morning. Meanwhile, Lady Satan communes with the occult forces, using a candle given to her by the mystic Tibetans to summon the shadow people for help. Dr. Strange, eat your heart out. She follows the bodiless shade to the Master, who's in the process of adding to his werewolf army. Get in. I'll take you to where there's plenty more candy. Gee, it's good, mister. What, kid? You've never had a Zagnut before? All Lady Satan can do is hold on as the car speeds away, but the Master notices her in the rearview mirror. Desperate, he augers the sedan off a sloping bridge and into a rushing river. Transformed into a werewolf, he escapes as Lady Satan is focused on saving the children. She dives into the murky water, rescuing each in turn, but by then the trail is cold. Back in his lair, the Werewolf Master taunts his hostages. Soon they, too, will be bloodthirsty fiends like him, delighting in hunting their prey. However, before it can come to that, Lady Satan arrives, having followed his paw prints in the mud. Calling upon her infernal powers, she burns the Werewolf Master where he stands. That's gotta smell enchanting. Poisoned deaths of children at the public nursery started reporter Kitty Kelly on a search for soulless racketeers and black market meat, but even Kitty found death waiting through the ruthless cruelty of Nick Nicotine and his money-mad devils. A desperate mother rushes her convulsing child to the doctor, but it's too late. Before he can react, Miss Terrell appears. Turns out all of the children are sick. It's Ptomaine, But what could have caused such an epidemic? The next day, Kitty Kelly and the doctor's secretary investigate the local butcher shop, with Kitty overhearing some suspicious chatter. Upon investigating, she discovers an unrefrigerated room full of raw meat, and it's swarming with rats. Worse still, the criminals loading a truck have noticed Kitty, who slips back inside. Feigning illness, she heads outside, and the goons follow, dragging her through a side door and into the warehouse. Kitty's then thrown into a cooler, the chance she needs to change into, well, herself, but with less clothing on. Kitty bursts from the cooler, and oddly enough, the criminals don't recognize her as the woman they just imprisoned, most likely because she took off her hat. And hey, our heroine knows jujitsu, a handy skill if you're planning on mixing it up with money-mad devils. After incarcerating said devils in the meat truck, Kitty strips down to her skivvies and heads back inside to find Nick Nicotine. So, no mask, but gigantic underpants. Noted. 20 minutes later, and the devils are awoken from their icy slumber by the boss. An angry Nicotine demands answers, but Dum Dum and Weasel aren't much good for that. Go figure. The next day, Kitty follows a lead to Nicotine. Seems he's the proprietor of the Crystal Club, a swanky joint downtown. That night, she and the doc make the scene, but before he can bite into his delicious ribeye, he's told to bag it and test it back at the lab. His departure doesn't go unnoticed, with Weasel forcing Kitty outside at gunpoint. And it's all part of our heroine's cunning plan, although she probably could have done without the pistol whipping. They drag Kitty back to the refrigerator where she disrobes again, snagging a handy meat cleaver in the process. Bursting from the freezer, she makes short work of the gang members, making her less superhero and more relentless, bloodthirsty vigilante with no regard for her secret identity or personal safety. She's like the Punisher, only rocking a cape and kicky skirt. Next up, it's Lucky Coin, a news reporter with the predictable shtick of flipping a coin to help make decisions, although he's not above socking you one if the script calls for it. Unemployed Broadway actress Honey Combs gets an unexpected visitor, one of the hostile sort. And he's brought his mother, which is nice. It's good to get your folks involved in your personal interests. Honey pulls a gun, but the creep is faster. He plugs her, and the pair lam it. 35 minutes later, the phone rings in the office of Lucky Coin. Told Honey Combs has taken her own life, he and sidekick Terry hightail it to the Duchess Arms, with pesky collie Kitty tagging along for the ride. They take the elevator up to Honey's apartment, learning the only other riders that night were a blind man and his elderly companion. Arriving on the scene, Lucky makes a pest of himself to the police inspector, who has better things to do than deal with this coin-tossing cretin. And hey, look, Kitty's here already, set to scoop Lucky on his own story. With nothing happening at the murder scene, Lucky and Terry head to the Lyceum Theater, presuming the blind man and old woman were actors in disguise. Seems like a stretch, but then we learn Hoyt Howard once carried a torch for Honey Combs. The pair race across town to Hoyt's, but Kitty is already there, under the pretense of interviewing Miss Howard about her son. She discovers bloodstains on the crutch left over from the murder of Honey Combs, but before she can act, she's attacked by the scissor-wielding senior. It's then Lucky shows up. Instead of keeping his head in the game, he flips a stupid coin, allowing Hoyt Howard to conk him on the noggin. However, Lucky keeps coming on, taunting the armed criminal, so he follows after him, leaving Kitty to deal with the reviving Terry. They reach the stage just in time for the show to begin, but Lucky's already there to bring down the curtain. He gives Hoyt a sock on the jaw, with Kitty nailing him simultaneously in the back of the head with a flower vase. The contused killer drops, and that's a wrap. Let's hope the audience got a refund. Judgment Day comes at 4 o'clock for Sky Chief. Physics Professor Burton Strong relaxes on the tennis court with Secretary Linda. We get our first clue something isn't right when these two start talking about the world ending at 4 o'clock. They head to one of the temples of Joshua Kendall, the self-appointed prophet who's warned of the coming catastrophe. There, they discover all of the rooms are padded in protective rubber, an odd feature that suddenly makes horrifying sense as the city begins to tremble and collapse upon itself. This is a job for Sky Chief. The pair rush back to Strong's apartment, still standing thanks to hidden reinforcements. Good thing he brought the skyship today. He suits up and flies off with Linda and trusty mechanic Ed McHale, escaping just as the city is destroyed. Using the radio, they manage to raise Kendall at his temple in New York, and a meeting is arranged. Disciple Hinkle appears to lead Sky Chief to Kendall, but it's clear the newcomers are trouble, and plans are made to dispose of them. Before it can happen, Sky Chief begins beating on Hinkle, while Linda holds the other monks at gunpoint. Unable to take a little chin music, Hinkle agrees to put Sky Chief in contact with Kendall. In the process, he activates a secret alarm, alerting the villainous cult of Sky Chief's impending arrival. We discover the criminal mastermind has increased the magnetic north 1 billion times by electronics, causing the Earth's great cities to crumble into the sea. With Sky Chief about to land in the temple, the atom gun blasts a charge of high-voltage death. After some shaky maneuvers, our hero manages to level the plane, but the extreme G's knock the crew out, letting Hinkle get the drop on Sky Chief. The monk contacts headquarters, informing them he's returning with prisoners. However, Hinkle is unfamiliar with the ship's controls and struggles to maintain his course, allowing a revived Sky Chief to retake control. Why, this guy's head is nearly as hard as Kitty Kelly's. He dive bombs Kendall's base, blowing the villain clean out of his insulated temple. Oddly enough, instead of reporting to shell-shocked world leaders about what the heck just happened, Sky Chief instead returns to campus, intent on maintaining his secret identity as Professor Strong. Seems odd, considering the current state of the world, but hey, maybe he's got a hot day tonight. Red Seal Comics. Fairly compelling as far as pre-code anthology books go. Granted, none of the characters are A-listers. Far from it. Still, Chesler and Company made the most of what they had. And they weren't the only ones, with many of these stories being reprinted by other publishers, sometimes years after the fact. The title makes for an interesting footnote in the history of the genre, from an era where reinvention was paramount, and you never really knew what spending that next dime might get you. I'm Jason Mick, and I'll see you next time at breakfast.